Hi, so this video is gonna be posted late. What's my excuse? I got my wisdom teeth taken out. I was not able to film because I looked like a fucking chipmunk. I was conscious the whole time, so that was an ordeal. The dentist was like, it's gonna be over soon, okay? And I'm like, why are you fucking talking to me like I'm gonna die? But better late than never, so I'm gonna do my August wrap up. I actually don't know how many books I read this month. Let me just pull up Goodreads and then we'll see. The first week of August for Booktubeathon, I read Your Story is Your Power, The Hazelwood, The Grown Up, and Annihilation. These are all really short books, so it's not actually impressive. I talked more in depth about that in my Booktubeathon wrap up. For the rest of the month, I read 3 more books. The first one is The Book of Essie. I gave this book 4 stars. A lot of people gave it 3. I can understand why. But at the same time, I don't give a fuck, so I'm rating it 4 anyway. I picked up this book because it was one of the books selected for the Book of the Month subscription box, which I don't subscribe to, by the way, because I'm very cheap. What I do is I look at the books that they select, and if I like one, I make my library order it. That's just a life hack for you guys. If you don't want to spend money on books, you don't have to. Sometimes BookTube acts like that is not the case, but FYI. The Book of Essie is a contemporary adult novel about a girl who is a part of a reality show about her family called Six for Hicks. It's basically white trash television, kind of like the Duggars. They're very religious, very white, very fake. The plot begins when she tells her mother that she is pregnant, so they arrange an emergency meeting with the producers to try to figure out what to do with the baby. Are they gonna have an abortion? Are they gonna pass the baby off as somebody else's? Ultimately, all of the choices were too risky, and what they end up doing is arranging a marriage so that nobody questions where the baby is from, and so that they can get good ratings out of it. Clearly, A+ parenting. The way that I've described this story makes it sound very trashy, but I promise that is not actually the case. The writing is very subdued. The story is more about the main character learning how to go against her family, her fame, and her fate. All of the good F words, really. I really enjoyed reading The Book of Essie. I would recommend it to certain people. I would recommend it to people who like The Girls by Emma Cline. I felt like the writing and the themes were pretty similar to each other. I would recommend it to people who enjoy contemporary, including contemporary YA, because the 2 main characters are high schoolers, so I think it's an easy step up from there. And lastly, I would recommend it to people who enjoy reading feminist themes in their books. The story deals a lot with rape culture and with women's choices over their bodies, and the emotional journey between the 3 main characters that we follow along throughout the book was something that I felt like I could root for. The main thing that really sold it for me was the platonic love. The other perspective that we see in the book is the guy that she marries. He's just this poor guy that the family suckered into marrying her because his family is poor and they offered his parents a whole bunch of money to agree with the arranged marriage. It's a really shitty situation for him because his future has been decided and he doesn't trust the main girl's family at all, and within good reason. So they have a very rocky start. But throughout the book, you get to see their relationship develop, and I really enjoyed reading those 2 together. I thought that their relationship was really unique and tender. You could really see how they genuinely start to love each other, but not romantically. And it was just very refreshing. He'll be like holding her hand, and I'll be like, yeah, you fucking hold her hand platonically. I knew I liked him the moment I read about him. For example, there's this one part where he's watching her on TV, so she obviously has to be very rehearsed, and she says some bullshit about this. I really feel that I want to do some good in this world. That's why I'm planning a year-long mission to help raise literacy rates for children of color in inner-city schools. And then his perspective says, she is 17 years old and thinks she can walk into some poor community and tell the people who have lived there their entire lives precisely what they are doing wrong and how things should be done instead. I blink at the screen and wonder if she's ever even talked to a real-life Black person. This 17-year-old boy is serving scalding hot tea. It's so weird because I was fangirling over them, but they weren't romantically together. But man, there are just some parts where I was just like, whew. It's very refreshing to see a main female character and a main male character really love and care about each other, but stay completely platonic the entire time. Essie laughs, and it's the same tinkling sound that first made me think I could trust her. So much has happened since that day, so much has changed, but that laugh has stayed the same. I realized that I love her. I love the girl that I am about to marry. Maybe not in the way a man usually loves a woman, but I love her all the same. platonic as fuck. The reason why I didn't rate it 5 stars, and probably why most people rated it 3 stars, is because it's a debut novel and it kind of, you know, reads like one. The main character has a plan that she sets out and everything just kind of falls perfectly in line with not much resistance. And the feminist themes that are explored aren't very nuanced. If you are a very critical reader, you might be noticing that, but otherwise, if you're just here for the ride, enjoy yourselves. Then the next book that I read is We Were 8 Years in Power, An American Tragedy. This book took me forever to read. Not because it was bad, but because it was very, very dense, both in terms of the writing and in the content. Because if you're gonna talk about how systematically and historically Black people have been fucked over in America for centuries, it's a lot. It was a lot to go through. It wasn't one of those books where I can just binge read it in one night. The content was very heavy. Like, I'll be trying to relax at the end of a really hard day, and instead I read about mass incarceration. So yeah, fun times. I rated this book 4 stars. I thought the author was really smart. His writing was really provocative. There were a lot of topics that I wasn't as familiar about. For example, the nuances of Black conservatism or the argument for reparations. And then there were some topics that I was already familiar with, like how Obama has to juggle between his identity as a Black president, but also being white enough to be palatable for America. Even though I knew about those things, I still found it refreshing to read the essays about it without feeling redundant, just because the author's writing is so freaking good. And he's just so fucking smart. Like, I would just be so intimidated being in the same room as him. Oh, I forgot to show this to the camera, but I actually annotated a lot of the pages in the book. It was just a lot of good shit. He writes an epilogue at the end that compares Obama to Trump. The tea was fucking scalding. Pointing to citizens who voted for both Obama and Trump does not disprove racism, it evinces it. To secure the White House, Obama needed to be a Harvard-trained lawyer with a decade of political experience and an incredible gift for speaking to cross-sections of the country. Donald Trump needed only money and white bluster. Honestly, this book is nothing but the truth, but that is why it is also depressing. Here's a quote by Frederick Douglass. "I have no love for America. I have no patriotism. I desire to see the government overthrown as speedily as possible and its constitution shivered in 1,000 fragments." Honestly, same. What keeps me from rating it a full 5 stars is, number 1, the inconsistency of the quality of the essays. There were a lot of essays that were very well done, but then there were some that weren't very strong. He also doesn't cover the intersectionality of race and gender, which I think is a huge missed opportunity. And then lastly, there were a few additional contents that he added before each essay that I felt like was unnecessary. I know he only added this because all of his essays are online on The Atlantic, so when he published this book, he needed new content, but the new content wasn't enough for me to feel like purchasing the book would be worthwhile. So it's definitely something where I feel like you can just save your time and money by looking up the articles online. But still, overall, it's a very solid book, and I would recommend it to people who want to be more politically minded. So after I finished We Were 8 Years in Power, the natural progression is for me to start with a very similar book called Catboy. I know, my reading taste is just all over the place. Does she have a type? No, she doesn't. Catboy is just a series of comics about a girl and her cat that turned into a human. Kind of. I mean, he still has like the cat head, but the rest of his body is like this weird, I don't know. He's kind of like what I assume furries would want to be like. So these two are best friends, but for some reason, before I picked up this book, I thought that he was her boyfriend. And now that I've actually read the comic and seen how wholesome it is, I feel very weird for assuming otherwise. I knew it was gonna be cute and wholesome, but for some reason I just thought that, like, I don't know, I just thought they were fucking or something, but you know, that's obviously illegal and wrong. It was cute, it was quirky, it has a nice pastel color palette. The artist also does this thing where before each comic she prefaces it with an outfit that both of them are wearing, so I just thought that was like a cute addition to it. It's a nice light read. So I rated it 3 stars. I would have rated it higher if it had an ongoing storyline or if there had been some depth to it, but obviously it's not that kind of book, so yeah. And that's fine. I forgot to mention this because I'm a shitty booktuber, but I actually read another book this month called The Crossroads of Should and Must. It's an illustrative book about how to find and follow your passion. I rated it 3 stars. I thought it was okay. It had like really nice artwork and some feel-good messages. So while I don't think it's life-changing, it's still a nice reminder for you to get started on whatever it is you've been meaning to do. It's cute, but I guess the fact that I forgot I even read this book says something. Yeah, that is pretty much the 3 books that I read after Booktubeathon and for the rest of August. Does she have a type? Who knows? In September, I will be reading Vicious by V.E. Schwab, and what else am I gonna read? I'm gonna read Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, because I was avoiding that for the longest time, but BookTube has been hyping it up so much that I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna give it a try. It better wreck me though. Like, if I don't cry from a book, why even bother? I don't have an outro. Bye.